This is Lady Anne, owner of KPNL Radio and hostess of the Caribbean Library of Lore, and I support Tessa. As an experiencer myself, I have filed my own reports with them, and the professionalism and heart they have shown my case goes above and beyond. If you have had an experience, I cannot recommend Tessa enough.
Hi, this is Ernie Hudson, Winston Moore from Ghostbusters. I want to let you know that Ryan Stacy, he's created the Experiencer Support Association, TESA. You can check them out at www.tesacan.org. Now, they investigate paranormal, UFO, and provide support to experiencers. But you can check them out at, like I said, www.tesacan.org and see for yourself if they're really Ghostbusters. I can tell you this, they are a non-profit organization. Good luck, have fun, and keep it blessed.
Good evening. You are listening to Beyond the Tinfoil Hat, a podcast by the Experiencer Support Association. Tessa is a UFO, paranormal, and paracryptid investigation association. We investigate everything belonging to the global phenomenon linked to highly strange and unexplained experiences. We also connect experiencers with other experiencers, creating a safe, positive environment to engage and discuss this phenomenon without judgment, criticism, or retribution. From the land of the white rolling sands, on the southeasterly tip of Georgian Bay, to all of you listening around the world, as we simulcast live on KPNL Radio, we salute you. If you want to go back and listen to our previous episodes, go to youtube.com/the Experiencer Support Association. Do us a favor and hit that subscribe button and ring that bell to be instantly notified when we are live, not only for these episodes, but every single element Tessa has to offer. On our website, tessacan.org, we have something for everyone. We have support for experiencers, data for independent researchers, and places to advertise for professional partners. Hello, everybody. Today is Thursday, May the 20th, 2021, and I, Ryan Stacy, am your host this evening. Before we bring in our guest tonight, I want to remind everyone chatting live to put the word question before your question, so that way I can quickly find it if I need to. A lot of you guys have been conversing in the chat, and it's really confusing, so if you just like to comment here, if you could just do that, it would really help me out. I will read those questions when appropriate. However, if you super chat, I will ask that question as soon as I see it. All right, the banner on the screen will show you that example, like I said right there. So, all right, our guest for Season 3, Episode 17 is Michael Horn. Michael Horn has over 40 years of experience as a science researcher and begun his study and research into the UFO contacts of Billy Meier in 1979. In 1986, Michael found previously unknown warnings originally published by Billy Meier beginning in 1951 about an unnatural man-made climate change, global warming, the increased frequency and intensity of storms, blizzards, tsunamis, and the coming climate destruction. Michael also found that Mr. Meier was the first person to warn about the damage to the ozone layer from an A-bomb explosions and about the connection between the extraction of petroleum and earthquakes and volcanic eruptions, all of which were subsequently scientifically corroborated. In 2004, after 25 years of research into Meier's information and the evidence substantiating his claims, Michael also became the voluntary Authorized American Media Representative for Billy Meier. For Billy Meier Contacts. Michael gives national and international multimedia presentations, university lectures, and interviews, etc., and makes frequent media appearances representing the Meier Contacts. In October 2020, Michael discovered never-before-seen historically unprecedented photographs from 1981 of a UFO interacting with a then top-secret U.S. stealth fighter at Groom Lake, Nevada. And the list goes on and on and on. So you can find his website at theyflyblog.com. All right, so Michael, put on your tinfoil hat. How are you doing this evening?
Right, I'm fine, Ryan. Actually, it's funny you asked that because I was all buzzing around today doing stuff here, and then suddenly it's like I was getting ready for this, and I started to relax. And I'm going to have to slap myself a little bit. I'm sure we'll keep awake with the discussion, but I got myself into this really nice and relaxed place, which I think might be better than being all amped up because we've got a little time to work here.
Yeah, well, no, I hope so. I hope that intro didn't put you to sleep, though. A lot of work goes into those things, you know. So, thank you for being here. Just for the audience knows, we are going to get into some controversial topics in here. It's something we haven't covered before, something I usually avoid. However, Mr. Horn here has the credentials to support these alternative theories, or I won't say, I don't know if theory is the appropriate word, but I mean under the pretext of the possibility of some of the things that are happening in the world are something else. I'm really excited to hear that alternative perspective. But before we get into that, I would like you, Michael, to just introduce yourself and let our audience know, like how did you become who you are? I mean, that's who you are now, but how did that happen?
If you mean in terms of this material, ever since I was a kid long ago, I was fascinated by outer space. And I grew up listening to the radio and then TV shows, space heroes, so primitive compared to what everybody is used to today. There's just no comparison. I even did a record back about 1967 or 68, actually got released on A&M, a record company, called Captain Tim, about growing up in front of the TV set with space heroes. In 1979, with many things in between that, I don't, if people want, they can read my biography and all that business, but I walked into a bookstore in Los Angeles and I saw a phenomenal photo book, and it had the clearest UFO photos ever. And that was still in relatively early days of ufology. Not that it was unknown, but really quality photographs and things pretty much unheard of. And these photographs remain the clearest, the ones from Mr. Meier, of any photographic evidence. And we can get into anything about that, including challenges if people have it about evidence. But that led me to want more information. A few years later, I got 1,800 pages. Those were transcripts of the conversations allegedly between Billy Meier and human beings who called themselves at the time Pleiadian for a specific reason. There is no such thing as Pleiadians, another story. But I went through these transcripts for months because they were also a little bit difficult in terms of the translation. They were in English by somebody who was much more of a German speaker, clearly, but they were fascinating. And I slowly started to get a sense that this was about something even more important than UFOs. And that evolved because within the next several years, I was already charting specific, prophetically accurate scientific information that these people had been conversationally conveying to Billy Meier, as well as things that were specific prophecies and or predictions for our world. And I thought, this is a higher standard of proof. Even though Meier's evidence has been independently authenticated, always get into that too, and by really quality, high-level people, you start to get into information that a man in Switzerland, a one-armed man living in the boonies, is publishing about virtually every planet in the solar system, geopolitical events before they happen. And it kind of goes, wait a minute. So I turned my focus mainly into that higher standard of proof, which would be, it's unimpeachable because, simple thing, we have copyrights that show when Meier published the material, and the events happened after the copyrights. Case closed. And I've run that by judges and people who are knowledgeable about the law, and they get it. A lot of people who are in ufology don't yet get this. And this is where part of where I want to take the conversation, because I'd like to present my view about what might be an upgrade necessary. And I can stop with that. There's so much more. I've been to Switzerland 20 times. I've produced or co-produced 5 different documentaries. I've interviewed 14 of the eyewitnesses to Meier's almost 24 assassination attempts he survived. It goes on, and I'm not alone. Yeah.
Let's talk. Thank you for sharing that too. And then, and to give context, who is Billy Meier?
Great. Billy Meier is a now 84-year-old Swiss man. He has one arm. He lost his left arm, most of his left arm, in a bus accident in Turkey in 1965. A year before that, by the way, he had been in India with a photo album of something like 80 UFO photos. He was in the middle of nowhere in India, and he was interviewed in a newspaper and all this stuff. So Billy Meier is this rather remarkable man whose life is it's kind of a combination of Luke Skywalker, Indiana Jones, and Lawrence of Arabia. He was known as the Phantom in the Middle East in the 50s because he was hired by police departments in West Pakistan, Turkey, and India to bring in serial killers and mass murderers. He's a man with nerves of steel. He never killed anybody, but he's protected himself and others with weapons when necessary. I mean, the man has a biography. People have no idea. And he doesn't publicize. He basically says, here is my evidence. Here are my writings. This is now for people who are interested. And that has attracted a lot of, attention and very serious investigation dating back to at least 1975.
So where does his involvement with ET and UFOs come in?
I like to say this very often at the beginning of an interview because it's so important. According to the information in this case, and that means when I can't prove something, as opposed to what I can, and others, I'm not the only one who can prove this. You could prove this in 15 minutes, and I always talk about how that can be done. But when I don't have the ability to prove something here, now I say, according to the information of the case. So, as a 5-year-old boy, Edward Albert Meier, he's Edward Albert Meier as a child, had his first voluntary face-to-face contact with an extraterrestrial human being, which led to an 11-year span of facts on board, taken around this world, taken off this world to many places in space and in time, according to the information in the case. 11 years after that, he began contacts with an extraterrestrial woman who was his second contact person who would tutor him, mentor him, take him on similar kinds of excursions and teach him many, many things. And and then in 1975, the official contacts began with another female, and official because these were intended to present information to the world officially, evidence, photographic, metal, sound recordings, all this stuff, as well as the documented conversations. And so his contacts began 79 plus years ago, and they continue to this day.
So then lends to the question, why is he not here and why are you here?
Sure. Well, a few factors that are kind of logical. Number one, he's an 84-year-old Swiss man whose first language is not English. He agreed in 2004 to my request to be able to represent him in America as the American Media Representative, and also more broadly in the English-speaking world. I've done that in South America, North America, in U.S., Canada, Brazil, Europe. That means the U.K., Amsterdam, Hong Kong, different parts of Europe. And I said to him, I want to do this. I will represent the information that you publish, that you make available as you present it, as long as I am able to reserve the right to say, I don't know if this particular thing is accurate, but this, according to the information of the case, and also to say, I disagree with something if I do. And he says, of course. And I said, you don't pay me, I don't pay you. This way it's clean, because people are going to accuse me of being in it for the money. They accuse you. All the skeptics say he's got a sex cult. I mean, things that are just mind-boggling. But to get back to it, he has survived, as I said, nearly 24 attempts in his life. He has a family. He works constantly. He meets regularly with the extraterrestrial people, even more so now than before because of the disease. He has a group of people who are part of a nonprofit publishing group who help him disseminate his information. And he's busy with his own life. And since English isn't his first language, he doesn't even do it any longer in German. The last interviews really were a few years ago. And when people have even approached him at the center there, said, we'd like to interview you, English speaking, he says, talk to Michael Horn. And I'm honored to do it. I listen, I don't know everything in the world about this case. There are people certainly that work with Billy and Billy himself that know more, but they have their own specialties. They aren't necessarily oriented towards media presentations or what have you. And this is something like, for me, that is a purpose that I really want to fulfill for this work and for the people who are attracted to it, to serve them in any way I can publicly. And I have plenty of correspondence that I can barely keep up with as well. So that's the only reason. It's not to avoid anything. He just, he's past the point of wanting to do that.
It makes absolute sense. It's just one of those questions, right? Like, sure. It's a logical explanation. It makes sense, and it's very easy to go in that conspiratorial assumption, and therefore, blah blah blah, this and that. I mean, like if we to compare that to a court matter, that's why lawyers speak on behalf of the clients, because the clients may not be able to converse what they need to say. So so in that sense, it makes a lot of sense. So there's a couple questions I want to ask around that, but before I do that, I did pull up real quick while you're talking one of the two files that you sent me. I'm going to share it on the screen here, just so I can show the. I don't know what one's better to show, this one or what other one do I have? I have the wedding cake UFO as well.
Right.
Which one would be better, that one or the wedding cake UFO?
They're two different things.
Okay.
The wedding cake is the more exotic. This is interesting in its own right because of what has been discovered in the films here and what's claimed.
So how about you explain what this is, and I'll just scroll through and
sure.
And kind of narrate.
This is like a front page of an analysis done on what's called the pendulum UFO film. This was the first film that Billy Meier took in Switzerland, 1975, on a rainy and cloudy day. And it looked like, all the people say it's called the pendulum film because people say, oh, it's just a thing on a pendulum and swirling it around a miniature tree. Well, this document that you're looking at is a rather lengthy and in-depth analysis, frame by frame, of this film that also revealed a lot of unusual things. Among those things, it revealed that the motion of this object was not consistent nor possible with an object suspended from above for various reasons. I'm not going to try to get into all of that. And it also showed that in some frames, the object appears to be within a frame in two places at one time in one frame. And there is information that's subsequently been released about this that is highly controversial. We're still waiting for more clarification, that the tree may not actually have been right physically in front of that farmhouse, but that UFO and that tree were in a neighboring area. This actually was happening, and that the pilot, the woman Semyaze, projected the hologram of the tree and the UFO in front of the house. Now, that's as much as I can say right now without messing it up. And I don't ask first of all, I don't ask anybody to believe anything here. This document and the wedding cake analysis is a 74-page analysis of the other, another examination and analysis online. They speak for themselves. The protocols and tools that were used in these analyses are made available to anybody. As an investigator, you could find out, okay, what did they do? What tools? Because they used a lot of, new technology. This thing was, oh my gosh, it's almost, what is it? 50, almost 50 years old, So the first analysis of these, photos and films authenticated them back in 1978. And there were independent people involved from JPL and NASA, USGS, a lot of high-level independent investigators who were scientists. They didn't have an axe to grind. They weren't trying to prove or disprove. They simply reported their own observation and analysis and conclusions. And that is what's made this also so spectacularly, important and frustrating to skeptics, because they try to attack the people and it doesn't work. The people were high. You had special effects, Academy Award-winning special effects people that looked at that element, high-level scientists who analyze the metal, the photography. So that's on that level. And see, this is the thing that's missing from ufology. Where are all the claimed cases? Where's the evidence? It's anecdotal, with the exception. Sure, there's photos of UFOs, but unlike this case where Meier took over 1,200 UFO photos, some of them were sequences, 9 in a sequence, 34 in a sequence. It begs a question that is never asked. How did he know where to be to take 9 or 30 UFO photos or films? How did he know? If this isn't a one-armed man making the most sophisticated, beautiful, detailed models, and then the investigators come over from America and say, okay, well, you say you're photographing these things. He says, yes. We'll load your camera with film for the next time you're going out. Okay. He says, I've been called on a contact. They load the camera with the film. Comes back 4 or 5 hours, whatever later. They develop the film. 34, 35. This is why, as you know, and as people who've seen any of my stuff online on Twitter know, this is why if I ever had any hair left, I've torn it out about UFO Twitter and UFO experts and online and all this stuff, because it's not that nobody is talking about the unasked questions. And then the big unasked question, we can jump to it, we'll come back to all this stuff. If this is real, if Billy Meier's contacts are real, what's the reason for them? And I say over, people, it isn't intended for you to chase lights in the sky. We're done with that. There are unknown objects in the sky. Some are natural, some are not natural, some are man-made on Earth, some are not. Now that we know that, and if we look at the Meier case, what's the reason? And I'll answer that, but you ask, because I'm loaded for bear.
Well, first of all, I looked at those for the first time tonight as well. And while you were explaining that, and I am looking at that, it reminds me of the article, or sorry, the CSIS report that I've just previously released. It's 105 pages on, I think I shared it with you. I'm not sure if I did. If not, I'll share it afterwards. But essentially, I did some research just as the way as you're explaining it. I put it out there. No one is looking at it. I gave it to the people that I think would look at it. No one's looking at it. And I've been feeling like, maybe it's just not good enough. And I'm thinking, well, it's got to be something bigger, some sort of suppression. And in this element, this is coming, from my understanding, this is coming from a man from another country. And it's being presented as acting to an American audience, and it's also being suppressed because it's a detailed analysis of an event that is confirmed. There's opinion on whether or not the object is there or not, but those pictures are so clear, and yet we know that when we get something from the government, it's grainy or it's fuzzy. Hell, we're still getting black and white photos from the moon, and you look at the moon, you can tell that it's not black and white, especially when it's illuminated. But so, I guess we can just jump into the first controversial question of the evening. Is I guess I did write it down. What's really going on with Lou Elizondo? Okay.
Well, I'm going to give you my opinion of what's going on. And let me just say, I'm not trying to be softball at all. Lou seems, in many ways, he seems like an affable, nice human being. It's nothing personal. Here's the thing. Lou Elizondo has been in the defense intelligence military for many years, certainly connected to UFOs since 2007 or 8, whatever. How is it that you and I and thousands of other people have discovered the Billy Meier case, whatever our opinions are, and no matter how many times and how many people are asking Lou Elizondo, he won't answer the question because he has a pledge. I will always tell you the truth. I will, hold myself accountable. I will, always push for full disclosure. So I said, okay, Lou, the truth, full disclosure, the Billy Meier UFO contacts. Crickets, won't answer it. Now, I know he knows that I'm talking about it because I put out recently a blog in which I have a video that was taken by Sean Cahill, or Cahill, however he pronounces his name. Sean is photographing himself, and then he pans over. While they're listening to me talking about Lou, they pan over to Lou in the front seat. Looks like a passenger seat, perhaps a European car, I don't know, or a reverse thing. Pans over, and Lou smiles and waves. They know I'm asking the question. Sean won't answer it. Lou won't answer it. And that raises a couple very troubling possibilities. One, Lou Elizondo, after all these years and fronting all this stuff on UFOs, TTSA and all that, he doesn't know about Billy Meier? The contacts going on for almost 80 years, the most dramatic evidence used in the X-Files poster auctioned off. So he doesn't know? That would bother me for this whole thing, or that he does know, but he won't say. That bothers me. Now, I will tell you something that I have not announced in any other interview. Christopher Mellon knows it's real. How do I know that? I'll tell you and your audience. Chris Mellon was in an interview with Joe Rogan, a man who's had too much to smoke and too much to choke and can't think straight. Joe Rogan was provided by us with the photo book from Billy Meier, 617 clear, primarily daytime photos, up to 3-4 of the crap. That got to him last year. What he said when Dan Aykroyd was talking to him, Dan Aykroyd brings up Billy Meier and he says, "Oh, I got that book. It's photoshopped." Photoshopped 1964 to 81? By who? That's Joe Rogan. So Chris Mellon is on with Joe Rogan, I don't know, a month or so ago. And Joe Rogan, because he's so bright, he says something about, that guy that hoaxes UFO photos in Denmark. Well, Chris Mellon says, "You mean the Swiss guy?" "That's right," says Joe Rogan. So I think to myself, I want to find Chris Mellon. And I find him. And I send him a message with several links to the stuff I have on my website. And he writes back to me, exactly. I must have been having a senior moment. Now, just to translate that for people, I sent him the rebuttal to Rogan's BS with the documentation, and he says, exactly, I must have been having a senior moment. He may not have put the two things together. Yeah. Now, if Chris Mellon wants to now deny that he said that. I have it. I, of course, screen captured it all. I'll put it in the blog tomorrow probably, but I thought I'd announce it on your show. And the problem here is that either of the possibilities for Lou Elizondo are not very good. And so I'm going to ask Lou Elizondo to ask Chris Mellon, or ask Chris Mellon to tell Lou it's real. Look, the serious part of this is it tells me that something is rotten in, as Joe Rogan would say, Denmark. You can't have a high-level intelligence defense person fronting the UFO topic and complaining about the bad treatment the government's giving him, who doesn't know about Billy Meier and who won't tell the American people the plain, simple truth. This is real. There's no threat from it. Now, in the blog I put up today, I put up an article of mine from 2007, which was actually an article written by Billy Meier 10 years earlier, explaining the origin of the UFO cover-up during the First World War, all the stuff about the American involvement in this for decades. And I put in there another thing where one of the extraterrestrials explains in great detail the true nature of the sightings of UFOs, those that are and are not from this planet, but the largest part of which are part of a very large international, insidious, I don't like to say plot, but agenda to control and enslave everybody here on Earth. So what my genius friends on UFO Twitter are all a Twitter about, sorry, friends, you've got to start at the beginning. Learn how to think, how to investigate, how to discern. Stop chasing lights in the sky. You've got enough, because you can do nothing with lights in the sky. You can't do anything with UFOs. You could have one hovering out there. None of us can do a damn thing with it. What you'd like to do, if you're savvy, if you're sharpening up your tools, is go, okay, what's real and true, not of this world, and what's it about? What's the meaning? What's the reason? And I'll tell you clearly, the reason for the Meier Contacts, in a summation, is to help us survive, our future survival. This is a very long-standing mission, if you will. It goes back a very long time to help us get through. Short of destroying ourselves, folks, we've got to not do it. And this beautiful setup from all these shills in the intelligence agency and all the willing, pardon me, dopes in ufology who want to publicize the next bit of crap thrown their way by the intelligence. The media now is effectively owned by the CIA. If you can't tell that from all the UFO, 3 years ago, could you get a UFO story on anything? And I'll tell you, I have been doing public presentations for 33 years. I have, for the past 10 years, sent out, at least 10 years, to every publication, author, journalist, so-called expert, scientist, anybody I could find. No responses, maybe a handful. I have lectured at universities at the request of professors who at first were skeptical and told me I was crazy. I spent months going over, answering the questions. And I had another thing I'll be glad to tell you in a minute. I really want to, but I'll wait.
Okay.
With investigators, people who wanted to put me over the coals. It's not me. Here's the material. I happen to study it well enough. I've been told by a judge it's courtroom quality that I can do. And I can do that. I can walk into a court of law in 5 minutes and establish that this is legitimate, authentic. And not anybody online babbling about UFOs and calling themselves an expert, that whether it's Nick Pope or, oh gosh, run the litany of these people. They don't know anything of significance in our lives. Can you cite, can you remember anybody, a significant piece, a page of uniquely important, previously unknown scientific information brought forward by any one of these people, let alone 45,000 pages published by this man with the help of these human beings for the love of humankind purely, to go through this with a world that can't think, that is ungrateful, that it just wants to be entertained. That's what ufology is. That's why the media has been now co-opted by the intelligence services, because I'm just being blunt here, folks. It's preying on the gullible, the inexperienced, those people who don't. I mean, every day there's a new person popping up on Twitter. I'm a UAP investigator. Phenomenon. Forget phenomenon, people. Find meaning. If you can't find evidence, if you don't know how to recognize evidence, if you don't know how to vet evidence, and you can't understand the purpose of this, you are just an entertainment junkie. You're kidding yourself, and you can block me and anybody else who's talking about this all you want. Your life is hanging in the balance. Quite literally, and we can get to that one. But
so I know I appreciate everything you're saying, and as I mentioned before we started, I've always felt uncomfortable about this fresh new push towards this document in June 1st, and I couldn't figure out why. The way you explained it to me allows me to, like, I'm resonating with what you're saying, and to be honest, like as an individual investigator who uses UFO Twitter and YouTube and all these as an attempt to get the message out there, it's quite challenging to be used effectively. I would prefer not to engage in those communities, but the fact that I was in that pot doing what I do as I normally do, you and I connected. So I do feel like it's needed, but like you just be. But the right people will gravitate to the right. Like there's these subcultures, these subgroups within it. And now I'm going to be sending you my work because I want you to rip that apart, because like, you know, we got this quote here that somebody should be, I am doing that. It may not be the best, but it feels like you'd be the guy to tell me that I'm at least doing better than 90% of what's out there. And, I lost where I was going, but I was really, I'm really starstruck right now. So you're basically saying all the things that I've been feeling, and you put it into words. So thank you so much for that.
Oh, you're welcome. I'll tell you a little anecdote. I've told this before, but as an investigator, you might appreciate this. January 2017, I get a call on a Saturday morning from a gruff-sounding older guy. Says his name is Joe. He's an investigator. I represent this Meier case. Yes. Will you speak about it to me? Yes. He said, are you sure? Because I think it's a big hoax. I said, sure, let's go. For 3 months, until about the end of March, it wasn't a conversation, it was an interrogation. But I kind of liked it because I had a feeling I was talking to somebody who was the friggin' real. He reappears at the end of August in 2017. And he calls me up and he says, it's Joe. I say, I know. Will you still talk to me? I said, I will. I'll tell you who I am, and I'll tell you about your Billy Meier case. Go ahead. I'm the former top-level investigator and supervisor for the United States Air Force Office of Special Investigation and the Department of Defense. Check your email. Don't take my word for it. So go over there. He's got, I don't know, a few photographs, tabletop, full of citations, close-ups on, Department of Defense, USAF, all this stuff. Promote this man at every opportunity, the best we've ever had. This kind of thing. It's like kind of like one of those movies, but it's real. And he says, you saw that? I said, I did. He says, now you delete it. I said, okay. So get rid of it. You don't keep it. I said, okay.
Did you delete it? Did you? Really?
Yes, I did, because it's a matter of honor. I'd love to have kept that. But he says, okay, that's who I am. And then he said, look, after we were speaking before, I went and I did this. I looked into that. The bottom line is that the Billy Meier UFO case is 100% ironclad authentic, and I will take on any skeptics on your behalf. He did. He took on a guy named Kevin Randall and another guy in India whose name you may not know, demolished them both. And then he called me and he says, look, these skeptics, if these are the kind of people that are attacking Billy Meier, he said, I don't even want to bother. They don't know what they're talking about. They're not investigators. He wrote a nice long article on my website. He explained in layman's terms, simple forensic kind of criminal procedure, means, motive, and opportunity. I had written a similar article 7 years before, but I don't carry the weight that this guy does. So I feature his article. And he explained how anybody, you don't have to be a professional investigator. You need to just think logically, stepwise, means, motive, opportunity, go through this. If you can't, he said in the right away, he said, if you cannot show me with evidence where this 27-year-old vagabond in 1964 traveling through India with 80 UFO photos in an album, who's interviewed by a prestigious paper, where he got those 80 UFO photos in the middle of nowhere in India, if you cannot show me where that happened, you're done. And to date, nobody. After that, the skeptical challenge just seemed to dry up. A couple people would try to appear, and it's just like they're done. So and this is good for you, I think, also as an investigator, because look, I'll be honest with you. It's like I have a blog where I talked about finding the mother lode. Somebody gets a map and somebody else has a map, and people are searching for this mine. One day a guy comes in and he's got in his hand, he's got the nuggets. I found the mother lode. Now, if another guy walks in the door and he says, hey, I've got a map here, I think I know where the mother lode is, should everybody push aside the gold in hand and start running out? I mean, you can if you want to find more, whether or not it's there, or you're going to go, wait a minute, let's go to the mine where we know the mother lode is, where we know that what we claim to be looking for can be found. This guy found it. He's given it to us. He said, look, I found it. I've got enough for myself. You guys take the rest. I can't even carry it all. This has got to be taken appropriately seriously for people who want to survive, literally, and just people who want to know the truth, not the theories, the speculation. We have dealt with... I've sent this information to anybody you know of or heard of, probably in so-called ufology, inviting them. I've offered this freely to Stephen Greer 15, 16 years ago. Would not even look at me. And here's the interesting thing. I just saw a 20-minute video that he did the other day he was being interviewed by this guy, Jan Wiedner, I think it is, about the secret U.S. military. It was a very good video. I wish the guy wasn't so dedicated to profiting and pushing silly things, because he's got good info there. If he wanted to take the Meier material, because we've got the background he doesn't have, he doesn't know it material. And we've had people who have gone through this material and have just been staggered by this.
No, it's okay. I just wanted to kind of touch on the evidence part. So as an investigator, as we're referencing, it's when we're doing any investigation, it's easiest to figure out the when, the where, and the how, sometimes the how. But it's really, 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 really difficult to determine the why unless we get collaborating evidence and piece it all together and finding that right person to listen or to do it. So moving forward, I kind of want to throw in some why, because those are the questions that never get asked, in my opinion, that never get answered. So again, for me, being subjected on both sides, not reviewing all the evidence as it's presented and all that other stuff, being completely neutral.
Good.
Why Billy? Why not anybody else? And why cover it up? Can you answer those questions?
I can give you my responses.
Okay.
And based on the information in the case. Billy is the only current contactee to these people. Historically, it goes back 13,500 years to the prophet Enoch, also known in German as Enoch. But speaking today, there are other people that have basically accidentally had an encounter here or there, very brief, with an extraterrestrial, with the human beings, because that's the majority, certainly, of what we have. And a lot of this other stuff is disinformation to scare people. So Billy, there's the reasons given are, again, according to the information. First of all, according to the real core teaching in this case, alternately called a spiritual teaching or creation energy teaching, it's a non-religious, belief-free teaching. I've got a book, I study, I test it. Is this real or not? Not a religious text that says believe this. Belief is not fact. We are leaving the age of beliefs for the age of truth and knowledge. People can believe what they want, and there's wonderful things in all sorts of belief systems, but I want the truth, as I think we ultimately all do. So, according to the information in this case, it's said that reincarnation is a fact of life. It's a bit different than any of the philosophies, sects, belief systems, religions tell us. And I'll give the real abbreviated form. We hear the term soul, but soul is not a real thing. Soul is the psyche, overall centrally located around the solar plexus. It has a lot to do with the consciousness, the emotions, the personality. It's temporary. When we die, this whole construct is dissolving, but the contents are being absorbed by something called the human spirit, the eternal, immortal part of us located deep in the center of the brain. That part, upon death, leaves the body. It is absorbing and assimilating all of the knowledge and experiences and wisdom of the personality that has just ceased to exist. It goes into a non-place as we know it. There's no heavens and hells. There's no consciousness for this because it's not us as a personality. It's us in its most essential form, this animating spirit. When it is time for that spirit to reincarnate into a new personality, it brings with it not burdens and guilts and punishments. It brings with it the potentials from all that it's learned previously, as well as having to have a fresh, clean slate again in this remember the previous life. We don't remember our previous lives. There's some accidental times when children mainly get a glimpse. Sometimes people think they're remembering their past life. They're actually remembering another person. It gets a little wild. However, the point being that if this is so, and there's nothing to believe because it's not a belief system, it's information. Is it right or wrong? You decide. If we proceed, the spirit that has incarnated, reincarnated, and animates a man named Billy Edward Albert Meier in Switzerland, has in previous incarnations and personalities been a prophet / contactee before too, going back 13,500 years. And this is the final time that we on Earth will have a prophet contactee whose sole purpose has always been to bring forward what they're calling the reality of life, the teaching of how the universe operates, its immutable laws. We're not here to be punished. We're not here to be, rewarded. There's certain laws that are just immutable, always affect life at every level and human beings as well. So that's being said, the reason for Billy Meier is he's simply the guy that is that guy. This time around, he could have been somebody else, and he is somebody else. He's not this guy. He's that guy. There have been other people who potentially could have done a similar job, but they either died or kind of declined to do it. And so this man is the guy. Now, there's been outreach to different governments. You won't hear about it. There's been even some people who were approached in contacts that shocked the crap out of them with Meier and one of the extraterrestrials for very specific purposes to avert certain circumstances, such as that would have led to a third world war or all. But this is all in the material, and people don't even have to bother with it if they don't want to. You don't have. It's not about Billy Meier, and I know that'll sound strange. He's the messenger. He did his gig, and now he was basically done, except that we encountered a disease here called coronavirus COVID-19, and now there's reams of information coming forward.
I was going to save that for the back half. That's
Anytime you want.
Controversial topic number 2. We'll save that for the back half. But okay, so I'm tracking everything you're saying. I'm eating this all up, and it logically makes a lot of it checks a few boxes on some concerns that I had. Again, evidence-based, fact-based, and it still comes to the why. So like we can have all these assumptions of or these knowings as why the government would cover it up and things like that too, and blah blah blah. But so let's look at the facts. The fact is there's a man in Switzerland that through scientific evaluation has made contact and is expressing to communicate with certain members, and those members are either A, not taking it seriously, or B, preventing that message from being seen or heard or given. So question number 1 would be, how could anyone assist in getting out a message, so whatever that message is that is being suppressed? Because if we do that on a whole, the more people thinking that way or projecting that way, it might be more beneficial. And then B, why doesn't the extraterrestrials or the contact just do that on a larger scale and approach everyone in the same manner?
Sure.
Why not make it so obvious that it can't be denied?
Well, let's look at the idea first of how we could help this.
Yeah.
Any and everybody who's involved, let's say, in UFO stuff and is investigating, studying, should look at this material. And I am always available. I do emails, I do shows, interviews, whatever, to answer as best I can, respond to challenges and questions. When people come to the realization that this is authentic and they're satisfied, they go through this whole thing and get satisfied with every question. Well, skeptic said this, he has a cult of blah, blah, okay, we go through the whole thing, whatever you want. Well, what about these photos? Yes, we can explain all the photos as well. Then when people know, and hopefully before it's too late, they would do something I've just done. I mean, among many things, I'd start with, if you're on Twitter, start asking Lou Elizondo and Chris Mellon and Alex and Diedrich to tell the truth about the Billy Meier Contacts. What's wrong here? Can't we? This is going on. If you've satisfied yourself, yeah, by golly, yeah. And he predicted all those things before they happened, and now he's saying we're going to get these things if we don't change. Hey, fellas, you guys are right there at the foot of the government, maybe even in the belly of it. Would you please reveal this, and can we start talking about this material?
Does he have a latest prophecy that has yet to be fulfilled that we could document, that we could track and see if it happens? Sure.
There's an old prophecy. First, I tell the story that I first read this literally in 86. It was published in 81 the first time, and in 87 the second time. I was with a friend, read it in 86, and I laughed. Why did I laugh? What was it about? It said, in the future, the United States of America will have two terrible civil wars, one following upon the other, and it cannot be helped, but that the country will break up into 4 or 5 territories with sectarian dictatorial rule playing a prominent part. I'm not laughing anymore. I have about 14 articles going back almost 10 years or more online reiterating this when I was watching the events in our country unfold. We are in the early stages. Every day brings a new polarizing dissension element, conflict. See, people think, like, people will make comments on that video about the Civil War. Oh, well, there's no Civil War now. And I've stopped even answering, because the answer is this is a process. And we are in a process where it isn't that just today, the Civil War began out of nowhere. For instance, in 2017, just a few years ago, in many predictions, Meier stated that the rulers and people in America would be attacked by governmental, non-governmental, anti-governmental people trying to overthrow. We had that on January 6th was one of those events. And I'm not looking, I don't have my thing. If I read you the thing, you go, well, that sure sounds like January 6th, except it's been on my website since 2017. We have one thing after another. The climate, a lot of people are this way or that way. Billy Meier, 14 years of age. He's the first person to publish in the future, unnatural, man-made, global warming, climate change, damage to the ozone, devastating weaponry. 14 years old. He predicted the computers electronically interconnected around the world in 1958. I have dozens of things.
What's happening next is what I'm getting at. What's happening next?
All right.
Under the context that everything he's predicted has come true, what's next?
All right. Well, let me give you one that I was in. So this is, I'll connect to current and future. 2006, I'm in Switzerland. I'm talking to Billy. I say, Billy, was our Iraq Gulf War, U.S. Gulf War, fundamentally about oil? And I thought he'd say, yes, it's fundamental. He says, no. Fundamentally, it was about your dollar. If things go a certain way, you may as well roll cigarettes with your paper money. Now, in 2017, he had a global financial crash, and he spelled out all of the various things that will be bringing about. We're at the doorstep of it. We're not far from it. A global financial crash due to speculation, due to the terrible indulgences in business and commerce where leaders and CEOs are paid outrageous sums, where money is funneled away from the people into this private, just all of the factors. I mean, a long thing, what's coming. And in there, he also reiterated that for America, the people in America will be dispossessed. The government will turn the police and the military against the partly heavily armed populace. Now, that's just some of it. We have specific predictions on, 7 different volcanoes that will erupt with 100% certainty and will cause massive destruction. Plus, another couple of things pertaining to eruptions and seaquakes and tsunamis that are going to be devastating as well. For instance, in 2005, Billy Meier published a warning from the Plejaren extraterrestrials. There will be a 9.0 earthquake in the area of the Cascadia subduction zone up in the northwest that will run for 5 full minutes at 9.0. I've been in 7.1 earthquakes for maybe 20 seconds. 5 minutes at 9.0? If you have any teeth left, I don't know. It'll be like, and then he says that generates a massive tsunami into the area off the coast of Portland. Then another earthquake, another tsunami, and then the wave heads west towards Japan. 2005. In 2008, OSU predicts a 9.0 earthquake running for 5 minutes with a tsunami afterwards. We have one after another. Here's some other stuff. I went 2 years ago. I took some of Meier's information up to what's called the USGS in Flagstaff, Arizona, to the man doing the imaging on the Mars rover. Pages of information on Mars. Showed it to him. He could not explain how it was possible that this man living in the boonies in Switzerland 20 and more years earlier published information before NASA discovered it. We have about 250 of these. So we're not short on that. This is where you can prove the case 5-10 minutes and you're done. Let alone Joe Tisk's whole thing with the means motive opportunity. How'd he hoax the 1964 photos? Can't prove that. Case is real. Let's move on. With you, let's do it. Any of it, march at your rate of speed.
Yeah, no worries. So we're going to pause, actually. We're going to pause for commercial. So But we'll continue after a message from our professional partners. Also, if you're listening to this live on KPNL Radio, which I see you're commenting, nice to see you. Thank you. And I know he mentioned Portland in there. I think that's where you are. Hopefully you're safe when this happens. Head over to youtube.com/the Experiencer Support Association to see this video that goes with the show if you're listening to this later. Don't forget to, I thought I deleted that. Ignore this. Remember that you're listening to Beyond the Tinfoil Hat, which is off the cuff podcast by the Experiencer Support Association, and we'll be right back.
Ryan is one of Canada's leading new UFO investigators. He conducts and oversees UFO investigations on a constant basis and was really taken by his research. He's compiled a tremendous amount of data regarding UFOs in Canada. And just as interesting, he really goes over how UFO investigations are done and what are some of the mistakes that people make when they submit evidence. Note for starters, don't edit your videos or photos before you send them. If you want to hear more follow-up conversation between Ryan and myself, you can go to richardolanmembers.com, where we have a candid conversation on ufology, the paranormal, and more. And remember, while we learn and grow and search for the truth, let's be good to each other.
The same thing that draws aliens to our planet is the same thing that draws us to others. Exploration, curiosity, sustainability of life. That's why we go. It would make sense as to why they're visiting here.
Travis! Quit playing around, man. Get back here. Travis!
The last thing I remember was this numbing shock. Stunning sort of a feeling. Very powerful.
Get away from me!
I was just out of my mind with fear, just screaming the whole time.
It's been theorized that aliens prefer remote areas because they don't want to attract attention. Whatever it is that they're doing, they would want to do that in a less populated area. There are multiple accounts of the same thing from people from all over the world. People that do not know each other, do not live in the same cultures, and they're all looking up, they're all seeing things in the sky. So it would be naive of us to think that we're alone in the universe.